What's up, Mike Osterman here, and today we're going to be learning the rail stand impossible, also known as the Primo impossible. Maybe you've called it the heel side rail, back foot impossible. There's a lot of different ways to describe this one, but we're going to learn it today. Our friend Johnny Geiger recently mentioned he was trying to learn this trick and a couple of others. So I figured I'd just make a quick trick tip for this so that you can learn it too. Now, like you may have imagined, the rail stand impossible starts in a heel side rail stand, and we use our back foot to flip the board end over end in a similar way that you would for an ollie impossible or a nose hook impossible. It's extremely helpful if you're comfortable in rail stands, rail flips, and it helps if you're comfortable with impossibles, both nose hook and ollie impossibles. To set up for the trick, you're going to want to be in a heel side rail stand, that is with your grip tape facing the same direction as your heels. I like to have the ball of my back foot on the wheel with my toes pointed inward at like a 45-degree angle, and with my arch and heel kind of over the tail of the board. You should be able to press down on your heel in order to rock the board upward like this. My front foot is on the opposite wheel, just kind of hanging out. I'm not thinking too much about my front foot when I set up for this trick. I'll take my front foot off the wheel, compress. As I jump, I'll press down on my heel and try to force my foot back towards the end of the tail, forcing the board to flip vertically. Once the board's vertical, I'll try to scoop my foot under the board, sort of sending it in an end over end rotation, and land with both feet over the bolts. Seems simple, right? Let's break it down. Now, the rail stand impossible is a tough one. It's kind of an awkward motion and a trick that requires really weird timing. And it's important to kind of break the trick down into the small movements and motions the board has to go through, starting with that first end over end motion that the board needs to make. Now, in order to get the board to flip end over end around your foot, we almost need to briefly push the board back down to the grip tape side and get our foot where it needs to be for a regular impossible, right? But in order to do that while also popping the board vertically, you sort of need to have your foot in that weird 45-degree angle pocket. And for me, I'm forcing the board forward and slightly to the right. It's kind of similar to the direction that I'm pushing the board when I do a Rankus flip, or the way that people flip butter flips. Kind of like forward in the chest direction and sort of back toward the tail direction, right in between there. So you can see when I push the board that direction, it kind of wants to go back to its tail stop position, right? So you can start by just pushing the board over into tail stop from a heel side rail stand. Now, that's a great start, but next we want to think about pushing the board over and then wrapping it around our foot, right? And for that, we're not only going to just force the board down into tail stop, we're gonna need to compress, really try to flatten your foot out against the wheel and the tail, and drive your back foot in that kind of forward and right direction that we're talking about. Now the board should be flipping up and over your foot, right? Once you can get that motion consistently, you can think about wrapping that back foot under and back around, completing the end over end motion of an impossible. If you haven't mastered the ollie impossible or the nose hook impossible, I recommend practicing this motion with all four wheels down and with one foot on the ground. And then you can take it to the rail, but again with one foot on the ground. Once you have a feel for dropping the board back down to tail stop, for flipping the board vertically over your foot, and for flipping the board end over end around your back foot with your opposite foot on the ground, you can move on to doing the full rail stand impossible. Now, I personally like hanging my front foot off of the board when I'm setting up for this trick. There are plenty of skaters who don't like doing it that way, but I learned from, I think, seeing Pierre-Andre do it that way. It's important to remember that this is an impossible trick, and just like the ollie impossible and the nose hook impossible, it might help to think about thrusting your body forward, that is towards the front wheels, as you're scooping the board. It can sometimes feel like you're falling out of the trick rather than launching yourself up into the trick, which can be challenging for some folks. If you're used to doing ollie flip tricks or ollie impossibles, this is gonna feel less like that and more like a clumsy rail flip at first. But once you've figured out the finesse of the rail stand impossible, it'll become easier to get your foot under the board consistently. And really that's going to make the trick much easier to land. Just getting your foot under is really the hardest part in my opinion. But be patient with this one. Remember to break the trick down, and soon you'll be doing variations like the rail stand impossible back to rail stand like Nick Ballou does. You can try the coconut wheelie impossible, and I'm sure there are so many different directions you can push this trick that no one has tried before. So go out and learn the rail stand impossible. Johnny, can't wait to see what you do with it. You're gonna crush it. And everyone at home, keep dancing. Oh, that was a weird one.